Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the WTF1 podcast. I love how you both just start waving as soon as I say hello. You're like my little puppets. I love that. I've got my little strings. But welcome to the WTF1 podcast. Of course, we have the two waving puppets of Tom Bellingham, the WTF1 founder, and Katy, the WTF1 editor. Haven't come up with anything funny this week. Just going to dive straight into it. So this podcast is all going to be about what's happened since Bahrain and the 3-week stratosphere that we're currently in, sort of just floating in space, waiting for the next race. And it feels like a mini off season again. You know, we usually get 3-week breaks for the summer, don't we? In that middle sort of spa period. But instead, we're having it after the first round. After all the hype, it's going to feel like round one again, isn't it? When we get to Imola.
It's so annoying. Like you say, I've never known such a big break, because I think the summer break now is only about 3 weeks. But to have this after one race, especially after the race we had in Bahrain, where it's looking like it's going to be one of the most exciting seasons in forever. And then it's just like...
There's only one race, Tommy.
Goodbye.
It's only one race.
I know. But I mean, come on, a 23 race calendar, and you have 3 weeks after the first race. We could have at least, gone to Bahrain Outer again. And
absolutely.
Are you saying you want 24 races on the calendar?
Yeah, 23
doesn't really count if they stay there, right? It's fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
No, it feels like the longest time ever. Sometimes it feels like it's longer than the whole off season has been, because like you said, we had that first race, everybody was so excited and so hyped about it, and then we've got this forever time period to wait for the next race. But I'm hoping Imola is worth it. Fingers crossed, but who knows?
You jinxed it now, Katy.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think many of our expectations are sort of in the clouds after last year's race, where, of course, we had that interesting battle with Hamilton doing the different strategy to Bottas, and Bottas picking up that damage. And, of course, Verstappen crashing out when he had a tyre failure, I think it was. So apart from that, it wasn't particularly great. But who knows?
All relies on a safety car, doesn't it, I think?
It does. It really does. And it's possible, because it's a very difficult track, very narrow, and that's the reason for overtaking being so difficult. At JMans91, we're going to dive straight in with some questions. Of course, there's no 3-word race review or 3-word preview or anything like that. On a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed are you that it's not Raw Cheek or Race Week? Of course, Raw Cheek or Raw Cheek, whatever you want to call it.
Never good Raw Cheek
yet.
Raw Cheek.
How disappointed? Of course, 10, solid. I mean, as Tommy just said, we've come off the back of one of the best first races for a very long time, and we're having to wait, and 3 weeks just feels like an eternity when you've just had that appetite whetted even more by the first race, and then you're just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting. I'm assuming it's 10s all around, guys.
11s.
No, that's no more than 10, actually, technically. So.
Yeah, 10.
I'm bringing out the Twitter voice today.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. But it's just annoying. Like, at least we've got a few bits to talk about, I guess. That's such a great intro to this podcast, isn't it?
Tommy, there are
Stay
things.
tuned.
Shut it. There are things to talk about. Katy.
Yeah, F1 teams have sprinkled over some little news bites that we can talk about in between the break. But I'm sure that we're all probably going to be wishing, well, us as the WTF1 team, that we had a bit of a break when we get to like all these triple headers and stuff that are coming up on the calendar. I'm sure we'll all be thinking back and wishing, I wish I had a tiny little bit of a break. But I'm sure fans are just want race after race after race.
Yeah,
a race every
weekend.
Out
our tiny violins.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Oh no, we have to work on Formula One. Right. So the first bit of news, and probably the biggest news, is Nico Hulkenberg confirmed as the Aston Martin reserve driver. So Nico is still hovering around the Formula One paddock, hoping for some kind of miracle drive. How old is he now? He must be about mid-30s, is he?
Put me on the spot there. Yeah, probably mid-30s.
Yeah, around that.
Probably
you can look it up, Tommy, whilst I'm talking. But yeah, of course, I mean, it's a weird sort of curve in terms of Nico Hulkenberg's career. And I saw someone tweet me, it was probably in an aggressive manner, but still I'm going to kind of touch on it, is that people weren't really hyping him when he was actually in Formula One. But as soon as he's left Formula One...
Oh my God, he's only 25.
What?
He's 33.
I was going to say, he's not 25.
What? He's done a reverse Tommy.
Yeah,
What is
he
this?
started in F1 when he was 12 years old or something.
Yeah. No,
I can't believe I
it's
actually fell for that.
33.
So he's got time. He's got time if he gets to Formula One again, maybe by next year. But it is interesting. Oh wow, it is interesting how as a few Twitter comments have said about. There hasn't been really much hype about Nico when he was racing for Renault. And to be fair, a lot of people, were saying that he deserves a podium, this, that, and the other. But a lot of people were also saying that he was overrated and that the reason he didn't get podiums was because he didn't have the minerals. He could have easily won in Brazil or, when he was fighting Hamilton that time, or at least got a podium, but crashed into Lewis instead. So, there were so many opportunities for Nico to get a podium. And because he's like this amazing comeback story, everyone's kind of jumped on that bandwagon, including us in some ways, that, Nico just, can he get back? Can he get a podium on his first COVID sitting and all that stuff? It's a weird way of turning it around. Is it because we feel sorry for him? I feel like there's a lot of pity there where we're like, come on, just get one podium so you can just rest easy.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of, in a sad way, for someone that is a very successful driver and has won in everything.
Won Le Mans.
Yeah, won Le Mans, he won A1 GP, he's won GP2, he won everything else that he's raced in. And then this kind of no podium thing has just kind of almost defined his whole career. And I think everyone was so hyped because he returned to a Racing Point that was really good. And then when he banged it in P3 or something at Silverstone, it was like, oh my God, it could happen. And then the Hulk train, like hype train started, didn't it, again? Yeah, I mean, he's a fantastic driver. Like you say, you can't say that he's not had his chances. But it's a reserve drive, so it's not like he's going to be racing. It all depends what happens.
Yeah, I mean, with Racing Point last year, they were sort of an exception to the rule because, like, apart from obviously Hamilton having COVID, Racing Point was the only team on the grid where, I mean, both of their drivers were taken ill with COVID, hence why Hulkenberg was needed. But obviously, as much as we'd like Nico to make it back into F1 and to get more opportunities, we don't want to put any bad wishes on Lance being ill again or Seb. So it's an interesting one. I think people are right in saying that the Hulkenberg hype train, yes, it's a good, fun story to jump onto, but he had a long career in Formula One and he was in cars that could have earned him podium places. And, when he was teammates to Checo was able to get to that podium step. But it's unfortunate that he's now got this sort of no podium Hulkenberg, like overshadowing his entire F1 career. Because like you say, away from F1, he's a hugely successful racing driver. And he's proved himself to be brilliant when he jumped into that Racing Point last year with such short notice and to put it with such a good result. So I'm kind of like on two sides of the story. Yes, it would be really cool to see Hulkenberg back. And I think everybody loves that underdog story. But then he's had a whole career to try and get that podium place and he's not done it. So I don't know, whatever team you want to be on.
I never really thought about this, but obviously he did 3 races, was it last year? But the first year...
He entered 3 and started 2.
Oh, yeah, of course. But 3 kind of weekends. But in terms of him not having a full-time drive for the first time since, about 2010, maybe, is the year where about 13 different drivers got a podium last year because of Ferrari kind of dropping back. He must have been like, oh, the year I leave is the year where everyone gets a podium and midfield teams are like, we're popping on the podium pretty much every race. So yeah, not the best timing.
Not at all. Question at MX Cantish. I think Tommy kind of answered this with his little now. Is there any chance for Nico Hulkenberg to get a full-time cockpit drive in 2022? I mean, who knows? I don't really know, to be honest. It depends if he gets another opportunity and is able to shine again. I feel like he's one of those drivers that, people or teams can rely on in the midfield team. I don't think he'll ever get a front-running drive because, as we've already mentioned, he's had the opportunity to shine and hasn't. Because he just felt like a driver that could easily finish 7th a lot. the best of the rest in terms of after Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. But as soon as it got to crunch time, where a few Mercedes or whatever, some of the front running teams have messed up, that's when it just never really came to fruition. So for me, no, I don't think Nico will get a full-time drive again personally.
No, me either. It's hard to place him. It's hard to know where he could go. Like you say, he's 33, which is ancient in Formula One terms, isn't it? Let's be honest, especially with drivers coming in now, age like 18, 19 as the kind of age that you come in, and we see people's careers finished by the time they're like 25, 26 now in Formula One. So he's one of those drivers where I can't see where he would go. He, like you say, he's a great super sub because he's a very reliable, good driver that's going to score solid points, and clearly he's proved that at very short notice he can deliver a great result. However, all these teams and their driver programs, you kind of set, when Hamilton goes, you think, well, George Russell's going, blah, blah, blah. Ferrari have got their plan with Mick Schumacher. Like, there doesn't seem like there's any room for Hulkenberg.
And he's not going to take a Williams drive or a Haas drive or whatever, because he doesn't want that. He already declined in the Williams drive, from what I remember, or going to one of the back. One of the back teams, because they couldn't pay enough. So there's clearly Nico values himself at least a midfield drive, and it doesn't seem like he's going to get it.
I'm surprised actually when he left Renault at the end of 2019 that either Renault didn't retain him as some sort of development driver for 2020. It seemed like maybe he just didn't want to take on a role. Maybe he thought that was quite an offensive offer because it wasn't a full-time race seat. I don't know. But yeah, like you say, he's such a safe pair of hands that you'd think, and he's so experienced as well in Formula One, that you'd want to have him sort of on your side. But I'm not sure what his plans are. I don't think he'll get a full-time cockpit drive in 2022. Like Tommy touched upon, there are so many young juniors that are coming through, even like on the 2021 grid, people like Callum Ilott and obviously Alex Albon is on the grid this year. Both drivers who have got a lot of hype and a lot of attention around them that I think would probably be a sensible and probably a cheaper choice for a team in 2022. So unfortunately, I don't think Hulkenberg's going to be back full time. But I mean, we say this, and literally 6 months ago, we were all talking about possibly a Hulkenberg Red Bull seat. So I don't know.
We will see. James B020186 asks, is Hulkenberg a reserve or rather a replacement should Seb's run of bad races continue? No, I can't see that at all. I think that if Vettel has 23 bad races, he will have 23 bad races. He's a 4-time world champion. I think that he would literally have to keep crashing into people on lap one for a team to make such a drastic action as that. They've got Seb on for a reason. They've paid big money probably for Seb as well. And there's no way in my head, if Seb has poor races, that they'll even think about replacing him personally.
Yeah, I bet Vettel, like us, is probably hating this 3-week break as well, because it leaves that kind of bad first race to linger for quite a while. Because at the end of the day, it's one race. If he has a solid weekend, it's all kind of forgotten. You're only as good as your last race in Formula One, it seems, a lot of the time.
It must take a toll mentally, though. For Seb, because he's come off the back of Ferrari, which was really difficult for him in that last season. Comprehensively beaten by Leclerc, and then you come into this. He doesn't really pay attention to the media, but for his own personal self, it's a fresh start. How everyone else is seeing it as well. Fresh start, Seb, 4-time champ. It's going to be a new adventure for him, and I would love to see him thrive. But at the same time, I always thought, and I said, didn't I, at the end of last season, that I don't think Seb will come out the blocks firing, and he hasn't. And as you say, it is only one race, but at the same time, if he was a fresh, revitalized Vettel, he wouldn't have had that performance personally.
Yeah, but we shall see. But I agree with you where I would be amazed, even if he had an absolute shocker, if they bothered to replace him, because, like you say, they've paid big money. He's probably extremely experienced as well, so does a lot for car development and can help bring Aston to the front. And whether that's him being at the front or Lance Stroll being at the front, but
I know which
no
the
doubt,
team would prefer.
Well, Lawrence Stroll,
yeah,
getting a 4-time world champion in that his son, say his son beats and Seb develops a really great car for him. That's a bit of a win-win, isn't it?
I think you said on the podcast last year, Tommy, actually, that by getting Seb in, it's going to be good either way for Lance Stroll, because if he beats Seb, he's beaten a 4-time world champion. But if he doesn't, then, Seb is a 4-time world champion and it's going to take time. So it's kind of a win-win for Lance Stroll. But yeah, I don't think that Hulkenberg will be replacing Seb. Like we said, Aston Martin have paid a lot of money for him, done a multi-year contract. And we've also got to remember, although Seb's had, a couple of shocking races, like, just be blunt with it, they've not been ideal. He is a driver that's more than just somebody who gets in the car on a weekend and drives the car around in circles. Like you say, he helps with that development. We've got a t-shirt on the WTF1 store, nice little plug, but taking the mickey, saying, that he does strategy kind of calls and he's a mechanic and he's this and he's that. And that's one of the reasons why he was helped to become that 4-time world champion. Yes, he had a really good car beneath him with the Red Bull, but he's got those minerals, as Matt keeps saying, with certain drivers, that means he's able to become that world champion, just like somebody like Max has or Hamilton has. So I think although Seb's having a tough time of it, they're not going to give him the heave-ho, she says.
Time will tell, won't it? And of course, Seb did have some bad fortune in terms of qualifying and whatnot, and he was put in a bad position. It still wasn't a strong race performance, in my opinion. And again, the strategy wasn't great, and he was kind of left out there on a one-stop. But it still just wasn't really the Seb that we know and have seen, especially at Red Bull. So we will see. Let's not make too many judgments. But I know I love making judgments from one race. But we'll leave it a few more before we stamp the seal of disapproval on Seb. We interrupt this WTF1 podcast for a very quick chat about our sponsor for this episode, Manscaped. The flowers are blooming, the grass is growing, and it's time to mow your lawn. Thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped, you can trim the hedges below the belt safely and efficiently. I'm talking about ball trimmers. Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming, have an exclusive offer for you, the audience. Use the code WTF1 to get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Join the other 2 million men who trust Manscaped. They are here to make sure your balls are smooth and smelling nice. After all, it's time for some spring cleaning. Manscaped obsesses over technology to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience, and they only use the best ingredients in their formulations. On top of all the amazing accessories you get with Manscaped, they've also thrown in 2 free gifts: the Shed Travel Bag and the patented high-performance reduced chafing Manscaped Boxer Briefs. Your comfort is going to be next level all over. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code WTF1 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code WTF1 at manscaped.com. It's spring cleaning, baby, and your balls will thank you. Right, let's get back to the podcast. Latif F1 the GOAT. I'm assuming that's Latifi the GOAT. That's quite good. Is Vettel in serious danger of getting a race ban due to his high number of penalty points? Yes, I think so. I think that. I wonder if there's a loophole in the book where 12 points and Lawrence Stroll just comes in with a massive briefcase and goes, "Come on, lads, let's 3 more points." What are we saying? Because was it 5 penalty points from one race, and we've got 22 to go, and he can't get 7 more penalty points. That's
a big yikes.
Sometime.
Yeah, this could age very badly, and everyone will clip this when it happens. But I still think the FIA will be lenient on this, and I feel like even if a driver ever gets 12 points, they will back down and not do it. Hamilton was it 10 that Hamilton was on after Russia? And everyone was like, "Oh, 2 more," and he could get banned. And then everyone was like, "Well, it's ridiculous because it's too over the top." And even if Vettel gets 10 and then makes a minor mistake that gets him 2 penalty points, for some reason, I feel like the FIA will just kind of change their mind. Change their mind, because imagine the uproar if Sebastian Vettel, like say 4-time world champion, gets banned. Obviously, there's the other stuff, but the thing that tipped him over the edge was like speeding in the pit lane or something absolutely ridiculous. And you're banning a 4-time world champion from a Formula 1 race because he sped in the pit lane. I just can't see the FIA doing it. I feel like they'll always start to have these like little changes where they go, oh, actually, yeah, okay, maybe not. We'll minus a few off. It's just like a warning.
It's difficult though, isn't it? Because, where do you draw the line? Okay, Seb's a 4-time world champ, but if Yuki Tsunoda starts crashing into people, what do you do? So it is a difficult thing.
But we've seen the FIA do that before, because in my opinion, like, you've seen absolutely horrendous behavior, and then Grosjean got a race ban for his crash at Spa, and it was kind of like, oh, he's a rookie and he's a, like you say, crash kid or whatever that they're not crash kid. Was it first lap nutcase that Webber nicknamed him or whatever? And he's one of those that they banned him, but I know they haven't crashed quite as dramatically, but you kind of feel like if it was an Alonso or a Hamilton, they might have been like, oh well, it's just a big mistake. But I think you're right. I think they would. We've seen it in the midfield. We've seen Ocon, to go back to it, overtaking Tsunoda exactly where Max did, pretty much, and they just didn't notice because it's the midfield. And it does seem sometimes that there are rules for the top and rules for the midfield.
I think all us F1 fans just want some consistency there. F1 fans just want some consistency. But you talk about like bending the rules slightly. So yeah, after Russia, Hamilton was on 10 penalty points out of 12. But then just hours after the race, the FIA took back the 2 penalty points. So he did remain on 8. So yeah, we have seen it where things have, with every single thing given by the FIA, like a penalty, the teams and the drivers can challenge that and, say that actually we've got evidence for this and this and this, and you should take it back. So they've obviously challenged that. But it's a strange one, because since the penalty point system was introduced in Formula One, because Tommy mentioned the Grosjean crash there, that happened pre-penalty points. So that was just a case of dangerous driving, here's a race ban. But yeah, it's a strange one. I wasn't sure that anybody would ever get to those 12 points to get themselves a race ban, let alone a 4-time world champion, or Hamilton even getting close to it. So it's going to be a common talking point, and we're going to have to watch Seb very closely, and he's going to have to be on his very best behavior. But look at 2020. Seb got no penalty points throughout the whole season. So it's not like he's just going out there and causing all of this bad driving. Like last year, his penalty points license was completely clean. So maybe it was just a case of a bad weekend. And like you say, he wants to come into Imola and just have that fresh start and start behaving himself.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if he does get to those penalty points, what happens, because of course, Hamilton with the starts at Russia, you can see how they could potentially argue that. But if Vettel has a couple more crashes, how do you argue that if it's his fault? Especially if it's things like literally ducking into Ocon's slipstream and losing the brakes and just crashing into him, which was very sort of clumsy, wasn't it, for him? Anyway, let's not bash Vettel too much. Let's move on to another subject, which is around the changes to Albert Park. Now, that was announced on April Fool's Day, which was a very strange time to do that, because a lot of people thought it was a joke, but it's not. And essentially, if you want to know what they've done, they've essentially tried to make it better, and they've tried to make it a bit more fast flowing. And so you've got a sort of widening of corners, very sort of, small widening of corners, for example, into turns 1 and 2. I'll zoom that in so I can actually read it. Yeah, so you've got a widening of the corner by 2.5 meters in turns 1 and 2. Widening of corner between turns 3 and 4 meters. Widening of corner by 7.5 meters at 6 and 7. But the big one is the removal of the existing chicane between turns 9 and 10. So that chicane, which kind of broke up a lot of the momentum coming out of the previous sort of 6 and 7 complex of corners, they then just have a pretty much a straight run through to the fast left-right, which is turns 11 and 12. And then they've also widened the corner entry by 3.5 meters down towards turn 13. So interesting. So they've made it a bit more of a hard braking zone into turn 13, when you get a decent run out of the sort of 8 all the way down through to 12. So I'm sure a lot of people will be looking at the images, because turn numbers, I'm sure, are quite confusing. But it looks good, to be honest. There's a question from Andy Dives. I'm really interested to hear what the three of you think of the changes being made to the Albert Park track. Good or bad? Do you guys agree with the changes, or would you do them differently? To be honest, I like what they've done. You know, they're not uprooting the entire thing and changing the entire layout. That's not feasible. But they've done something that a lot of people have already said people should do to certain tracks that have clear issues with them. And turns 9 and 10 as a chicane never really brought us great racing. Whereas now, with that fast flowing part of the track, I think it's looking pretty good, especially with the hard braking zone now down towards turn 13, which will make it even more of an overtaking opportunity than it was before.
Yeah, the actual circuit itself, if you've ever driven it on the F1 game without rules and you cut all the corners, that's pretty much what the new layout is. I think it said that they're going to take about 5 seconds off it. I'm not too sure about this.
Really?
Yeah, which is weird because I looked at it and was like, and I saw like how popular it was, and a lot of people were like, yeah, that'll definitely improve it. For me, I don't really understand why getting rid of braking zones would make, but I know it's difficult to follow between turns 9 and 10. But how I just envision it is they'll follow each other. Yeah, they can follow each other quickly through that chicane, the new chicane, which kind of straight lines that old chicane. And then they just get to that quick 11 and 12 where they'll separate out again. And then they can't make the move into turn 13. So you almost want to get rid of 11 and 12 as well, which I appreciate. I can see why they've not done that, because it's a really exciting corner, one of Formula One's best from a spectator point of view. The change of direction is incredible, but at the same time, you kind of feel like if they'd just straight lined that, the cars could follow all the way, and then they've got a nice big braking zone. Because the problem is the cars take so long out of a corner to actually get close that there's not any long enough straights to catch up. And now the cars are so insanely quick. It's really difficult. And same with kind of turn 1 and 2. Turn 3 seemed to be quite a good braking zone, which they've kind of changed a little bit to make it quicker. Turn 1 and 2, they've straight lined a little bit. So I'm hoping that makes it a little bit better for overtaking. But I'm not 100% sure. But one thing that I did find interesting is I wonder how much of these changes are because of the new regulations that are coming in. Because if you look at the Jeddah circuit, it seems like this new trend is to make the tracks as quick as possible and get rid of the chicanes. Because, you know, as we know, I'm old, and when I was watching Formula One, it was all about slowing the cars down, putting loads of chicanes on these classic tracks, and now it seems like they're getting rid of them almost. To saw it. We've even seen it at Imola, Australia, and then Jeddah as well is a really quick track. So I don't know. We'll see. I guess we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm a little bit different to you. I don't feel like it will work, but I guess it's worth trying something.
Complete disagreement.
Yeah.
There's not even a, fair enough. Tommy. No, I appreciate you. No,
I hate you.
Get out. Because sorry, before you go, Katy, the turn 6 and 7, I think as well, they've widened the corner there by 7.5 meters. So I think they'll easily get close enough, because even 6 and 7, they've made more of a straight line. So from literally turn 5, it looks like it's going to be pretty quick all the way down to turn 11. So there must be an opportunity there for overtaking. If not,
maybe it's DRS. Maybe they're going for DRS passes rather than braking.
I don't know if they'll be allowed. Yeah, maybe DRS through the removal of the chicane all the way down to 11. Anyway, we'll find out. Katy, what do you think?
I was going to say, loads of people were commenting and saying my change for the Albert Park circuit would be to move it to Adelaide. So there are lots of people that aren't fans of the Albert Park track, but I think I'd rather them change it and try it and see if it works than just leave it stagnant and just keep it the same and think there's nothing that we can do differently. But the one thing to consider is that Albert Park is a street circuit. It's just a normal working park, the rest 11 months of the year. So they're going to be quite limited with what they can do. Unfortunately, I don't think they're just going to be able to move the lake or chop down some trees to make way for things. But yeah, I think it should be good. I'm all game for change. I like change. So we'll have to see how it all turns out. But yeah, just stupid announcing it on April Fool's Day. I know how time zones work, and that in Australia it's probably late evening for them when they announced it, but we put like an April Fool's gag article out, and then an hour later put this out, and people were like, haha, I'm not falling for it again. And I was like, no, it's genuinely not a joke, like this is actually happening, please.
It's real. Right, moving on from Albert Park and talking about some more street circuits. James Allen, 1993, not like the James Allen, has come in with a question. With more and more new circuits being street or city circuits, Baku, Hanoi, Jeddah, do you think we are seeing the end of open, dedicated race circuits? I hope not, in brackets. Seems that new circuits like Zandvoort and Portimao got people a lot more excited in 2020. I mean, Formula One kind of goes where money goes, really. So however they're created, I don't think it'll be the end of open circuits, to be honest. And there will be the classics that will stay on the calendar forever, but there will also be ones that just come on board, like Jeddah, and they're very different. But I don't know. It's a difficult one because, as I say, it really dictates on, where a circuit wants to go and all that sort of stuff. So it's a difficult thing to say. And Zandvoort, I don't think Zandvoort really got people going. I think Portimao did. Zandvoort, because of the fact, the atmosphere would be amazing. But the circuit itself, I don't think got people excited at all, because we were all concerned that would we get any overtaking whatsoever, apart from maybe into turn one. But even then, that's not really a massive hard braking zone. So, yeah, not sure on that one.
Yeah, I hope not as well. It does seem like this is the way they're going. And, I like tracks like Monaco and Singapore because they're special, not because they're like every single one is like it. Like, you want variety on the calendar, and it kind of loses the appeal if they're doing it. And the thing is, they're obsessed now with it's the promoters, like you say, they go where money goes. And if you think of these countries, like, it looks better for them. We've seen it in Formula E, which I'm sure Katy will go into as the Formula E expert. But as a country bringing Formula One in nowadays, you're kind of bringing it to the main city, and there's loads of hype around it, and it's kind of like all cool and fancy, rather than a less glamorous circuit in the middle of nowhere. If Formula One World Championship was starting today, they'd probably do a race in the middle of London or a city, not an airfield in Northamptonshire. So
it makes sense commercially, doesn't it?
Exactly. It makes sense. But then from a fan's perspective, everyone loves Silverstone, and the track is amazing. The racing is always brilliant. The atmosphere is great because it's always packed out. But from a circuit promoter's side, they're normally like, they want this kind of big city party thing. So I do hope, because I actually had a look through when I saw this question, and yeah, Baku, Hanoi, Jeddah, even Sochi to a point is kind of almost a street track, like built in a purpose-built area. And the fact that Zandvoort, Portimao, Imola, they're old tracks that have been built ages ago that have come back to the calendar. You're not getting these tracks anymore. They are like,
what was the latest one? Would it be like Kota or
Kota? Would
Abu
be
Dhabi, I guess.
Kota, I think, is the latest one. Yeah, because Kota was 2011, 12, something like that, 2010. Yeah. So yeah, that would be the latest purpose-built circuit. So it is a slight worry that it's becoming a bit of a dying thing.
Yeah, I love street circuits, but I also really like all of these traditional racing circuits, like we said, Portimao or Silverstone or Spa or wherever. But like Tommy mentioned, if we look at where F1 is wanting to go, think of like a young audience, for example, that they're trying to appeal to with all of this drive to survive. If you are a 15-year-old F1 fan and none of your family like F1, how are you going to get yourself? So I live on the South Coast. How would I get myself to Silverstone if I don't drive? I don't have anybody I know that likes it. Whereas I could go up to London, catch the train, get into London really easily, accessible. And so that's kind of what Formula E has done, is although obviously their cars are quieter, which is why it's so appealing, and they're electric, so they don't, burn loads of emissions up while they're going around the cities. That's the kind of thing that they've taken, is that They want to make it accessible. They don't want people getting in their diesel or petrol cars and driving 10 miles out of the city to a racetrack, which is going to just be adding to the emissions. And we all know that Formula One has got the sustainability thing that they want to introduce. But they want to encourage people to get public transport or walk to these city centre locations. And then, like Tommy said, make it this big party atmosphere like we see with racing in Albert Park or Monaco. So it's a shame, because I would really love it if we could go to more old school circuits, but then I can also see, like you said, from a commercial point of view, why F1 have got their sort of eyes on the prize with these city centre circuits. But yeah, I hope that we do get some more new good tracks that are sort of in the middle of nowhere, but I'm sure Formula One are thinking of many things like the sustainability and accessibility for new fans.
There you have it, Katy Fairman, Formula E correspondent. They're live on the ground. Thank you for that sustainability chat there, Katy. It's a good point. Okay, moving on now to sprint races set to be confirmed soon. So we've expected it to be confirmed about 1 million times, to be honest. The amount of times Tommy said, we need to do a podcast now before they release something else and it's going to be irrelevant. And it still hasn't been confirmed yet, because there's all kinds of toing and froing going on about what it's going to look like. There's rumours going around about, again, what it looks like. Tommy, do you have those rumours to hand, or do you know much about the sprint races? No, have you got any Formula One info, people?
So the sound of it is that the teams have finally agreed that it's going to happen. They're going to trial it in a few races. I think it was 3. Katy, can you remember which one they are? Because I'm trying to remember. It's Silverstone.
I think they've said Interlagos again, but then I don't know if we're going to be going there. So
yeah. So, but three races where they'll try this sprint format. The teams have finally agreed to it, but now they need money to essentially run Formula One cars more.
Because that was the sticking point, wasn't it? Was the fact that Formula One, the teams were like, yeah, let's do it. But they also need to be paid by Formula One to do these extra races.
Exactly.
And Formula One aren't exactly printing money at the moment with no fans at races, pretty much. So yeah, I can see where the problems lie.
Yeah, but the annoying thing about the sprint race is that it seems like they're not going to do reverse grids, which I'm very upset about. And then even worse, the points system, by the sound of it, are only going to the top 3, which to me is basically just another way to give Hamilton, Bottas and Verstappen some extra points on a race weekend.
The points only go to the top 3?
So you get 3 poits for winning, 2 points for second and 1 point for third.
And qualifying is just normal? So
yeah, on the Friday.
So what is the point in these sprint races?
Great question.
And that's the thing. If we go to Interlagos and we've got this incredible spicy battle between Hamilton and Verstappen going to the last race, and Hamilton wins the title by getting 3 points on a sprint race, and then we have to go into Sunday, it would kind of ruin it a bit. So it just seems it seems a classic Formula One thing where they've tried to introduce something and then they've gone back and forth, and then it's kind of mellowed out from a really awesome and crazy idea, and they've kind of backtracked because people don't want reverse grids and people don't want this and that, and instead
you say people don't want reverse grids. Mercedes don't want reverse grids,
and now probably Red Bull.
yeah.
It's very odd. I can't. The thing that I've read about the 3 points is very strange.
It's massively like a kick in the nuts, I think, because not that I have any, but just clarify that.
Metaphorical nuts.
Metaphorical.
It's a kick in my metaphorical nuts.
Yeah, literally. But
thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this podcast.
Oh no, Tommy's going to spit out his water. Oh dear, but it's just such a shame, because reverse grids would have been awesome to see. And like you say, if it's just going to be another example of the same guys in the top 3 getting even more points, the championship could be decided on a Saturday from them just like tootling around doing their sprint race or sprint qualifying or whatever they want to call it.
tootling around. They're not just, it's not a Sunday. I mean, it might be a Sunday drive sometimes.
I really think I've got a horrible
Saturday
feeling
drive,
that it really is going to be.
Saturday.
Yeah, it's just going to be the same lot that start, however they qualify, however they start. It's just going to be the same result. Nobody's going to want to risk it in case they do damage to their car that's going to affect them in the result on Sunday.
That's another point, isn't it? If they have a crash on Saturday trying to get 3 points, and they can't repair their car.
They'll be so safe with overtakes and stuff. Like, you're not gonna dive bomb someone.
Why not the reverse grids?
I know you're not gonna dive bomb someone into turn 1 when there's literally no point on offer.
I want to see George Russell on pole. That's it.
Well, surely the whole point is they looked at Monza when Gasly and Sainz were leading and how exciting it was having different people at the front, and instead have gone, let's have a Ham-Bot-Ver race, but shorter.
How long is the race going to be? Do we
Probably
know?
about 45 minutes.
40 minutes, something like that, 45 minutes.
It's 45 minutes for 3 points, and yet it's an hour and a half for 25.
And yet F1 are going, we want to be really sustainable, so we're going to put on another 45-minute race. Okay, then that makes sense.
That really
but I guess there's less practice, isn't there? So that's how they.
Yeah.
And this is me complaining that there'll be less practice. That's how much I think they've bottled this and not done it right. That even with less practice, I'm like, what are you doing? And then the first race will be an absolute banger, and we'll all be like, sorry.
No, but the thing is, the sprint races are just going to be an extra practice session for a lot of the teams, because they're not going to score points if they're not in the top 3. So it's just like they're just going to tootle around, and they're not going to bother pushing, are they? Or even going for anything. They'll just, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a disaster if that format is the way to go. If it was like 10, 8, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1 or whatever, and there was actually something on the line and it's reverse grids, you've got an absolute worldie on your hands, because they'd actually risk it for these points. But screw it. It's clearly Formula One know better than we do. They don't. They need to listen to the fans. We're angry right now. Okay. Zeta Zalazar, what are your takes on the possible sprint race on Saturday British Grand Prix? So British Grand Prix Saturday. The actual format itself, isn't it? Friday is practice and qualifying. Saturday is the sprint race, and then Sunday is the race.
Yes. So there's
I feel like So Friday is qualifying for the Sunday race, or the Saturday
race.
And so when's
sorry, because the sprint race does decide the order, I think, of the Sunday race. No, it doesn't, does it?
No, I don't think it does.
I don't think it does.
This is it. It's all up in the air at the moment.
We don't know yet, but it's rubbish.
Because I've seen people say about qualifying being on the Friday, so it must be that the sprint race is 3, 2, 1 and sets the qualifying order for Sunday. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense.
It would make sense, because you'd have nothing to race for.
No, exactly. And then it would be a tootle around.
Yeah, I think they said, because we were calling it a sprint race, and I think they've said it's actually called sprint qualifying. So maybe it will be the qualifying for the Sunday race.
It has to be. If not, then I'll happily hold my hands up. But it must be. It can't be the other way around, because otherwise Saturday would be such a meh, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be
exactly
worth anything.
And qualifying on a Friday, we've had this problem. We spoke about it during some of that time wins we've done, where they've done this before, where they did qualifying where it was, I think, Sunday morning, or once they did the aggregate qualifying where the first session was on a Friday. And people work on a Friday. People are at work, like, people don't get to watch it. And it's very odd to take that away from. You would like to have quite an important session.
Saturday sprint race qualifying and Saturday sprint race, wouldn't you? Like the qualifying for the sprint race on the same day as the actual race itself. I don't know, because
I guess their thinking behind it is, well, no one watches Friday.
Yeah.
But if there's actually qualifying, there's something exciting where it means something on a Friday.
But people, as you say, won't be able to watch it. They're at work. I don't know. It's a massive topic of conversation, and of course, we're kind of running on rumors and things. It hasn't been fully confirmed, but it does seem like the way we're talking about is the most likely way that Formula One are going to go about it. So. Interesting. We got a little bit confused there, but I think we've managed to iron it out. It is quite a confusing thing to talk about. Well, unless Tommy and Katy, Tommy, do you have any final thoughts?
F1, please never have a 3-week break again after the opening round.
Fair. I think it was more COVID reliant on that, wasn't it?
Yeah,
The fact of there was cancellations and things like that, and they could have still done an outer potentially, but I guess again it depends on money and all that good stuff. So clearly there was a reason, because I can't imagine they've looked at the calendar and gone, yes, 3-week calendar, 3-week break. Sorry, that's what we want to do after the first race. I'm sure it was something that they agreed on, but not very happy to. Katy, final thoughts. You had a lot of time.
I did. I like Tommy's background. That's my final thought.
Okay, fair. Yes, I also like Tommy's new office and the AlphaTauri colours, the Sonoda fanboy. Can we turn the camera? Is it easy to turn the camera, Tommy, and show the stripe on your wall? Hopefully you haven't got underwear littered around your house. There you go. Although it looks
nice. It looks black.
It looks black on my screen. Definitely isn't from what you've posted on Instagram. But there you go. Right. So there's our kind of filler podcast. If you've made it to the end, I'm very, very proud of you. We will be back to full Formula One hype from next weekend, of course. We'll be back with qualifying watch along as well, which is very exciting. Please make sure to check out Manscaped, who has sponsored the podcast. And Katy did a great nuts thing, which thank you so much for that tie-in.
Sponsoring Katy's metaphorical nuts.
Yeah, Katy probably didn't even realise that it was actually sponsored by Manscaped. But anyway, we are done. Give us 5 stars. Give us a thumbs up, please. And we'll be back for some more content next week, I'm sure. Internet's best reactions, of course, to Imola. We've got another video in the pipeline going out in a couple of days. All sorts of stuff. So subscribe if you're new. Peace. Bye, Tommy. Bye, Katy. Take care. Adios.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.